Life in Oak Ridge Estates had always been predictable. Quiet streets lined with manicured lawns, white picket fences guarding modest but well-maintained homes. The kind of suburban paradise where people moved to raise families away from the chaos of city life. Every morning followed the same comforting rhythm. My alarm would sound at exactly 6:15 a.m. I would shuffle into my kitchen, still half asleep, and start the coffee maker. The gentle gurgling sound would fill the silence of early morning as I prepared breakfast for my child, Ellie. Being a single father had its challenges, but those quiet moments before the day truly began were sacred to me. By 7:00 a.m., Ellie would come downstairs, usually with mismatched socks and that perpetually untamable cowlick sticking up from the back of her head. We would sit together at our small breakfast table, her telling me about whatever book she was currently reading or a science project she was excited about at school. "Did you know that some butterflies can taste with their feet?" she asked one morning, her mouth full of cereal. "No talking with your mouth full," I reminded her gently. "And no, I did not know that. Tell me more." These conversations were the foundation of our relationship. Being both mother and father to Ellie had never been easy, but it was always worth every sacrifice. After losing her mother when she was just 3, I had become fiercely protective of our little world. By 7:30 a.m., we would begin our walk to the corner bus stop. It was only about 100 yards from our house, but those few minutes of walking together had become a cherished ritual. Ellie would bounce alongside me, her backpack nearly as big as she was, chattering about her upcoming day. Sometimes we would count squirrels. Other times we would play I Spy. It did not matter what we did. What mattered was that we did it together. The bus stop itself was nothing special, just a simple street corner where Maple Drive met Oakwood Avenue. No bench, no shelter, just a street sign and a stretch of sidewalk where the neighborhood children gathered each morning. I would stand with Ellie until the yellow school bus came rumbling around the corner. I would wait for her to climb aboard, wave to her through the window, and then head back home to prepare for my own day at work. This had been our routine for 3 years without incident. Our neighborhood was governed by the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association. Most people simply called it the HOA. Like many such organizations, it had its share of rules and regulations. Some made sense. Others seemed designed solely to give certain people a sense of power. I had first noticed Karen Whitman at an HOA meeting 6 months ago. With her perfectly highlighted bob haircut and perpetual scowl, she seemed to take particular pleasure in reporting violations to the board. Her clipboard was always in hand, filled with meticulous notes about garbage cans left out too long or grass that had grown a 1/4 inch above regulation height. "Section 4, paragraph 6, she would announce with authority during meetings. "The Johnsons on Sycamore Lane have unauthorized lawn ornaments." I generally kept to myself at these meetings. Few people in the neighborhood knew what I did for a living, and I preferred it that way. Being chief of police for our small town came with enough attention at work. At home, I was just Ellie's dad. It was on a Tuesday in early October when I first noticed Karen watching us at the bus stop. She was sitting in her white SUV across the street, staring intently in our direction. The next day, she parked a little closer. By Friday, she had moved to a spot directly across from where Ellie and I stood each morning. Something about her demeanor made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. 20 years in law enforcement had taught me to trust my instincts, and my instincts were telling me that Karen Whitman was looking for trouble. That Monday morning, as Ellie and I walked to the corner, I could see Karen already parked in her usual spot. But today, something was different. She was not just watching, she was waiting. The morning air carried the first hint of autumn chill as Ellie and I reached our usual spot. Karen did not waste any time. The moment we arrived, her car door swung open and she emerged, clutching her ever-present clipboard and a folder stuffed with papers. She marched toward us with purpose, her heels clicking aggressively against the sidewalk. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice sharp enough to slice through the peaceful morning. "I need to speak with you about your daily activities at this corner." I placed a protective hand on Ellie's shoulder. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitman," I said calmly, though I felt my guard immediately go up. "It is Ms. Whitman," she corrected with a tight smile that did not reach her eyes. And I am here in my official capacity as HOA Compliance Officer. I nodded politely. What can I help you with? Karen thrust a paper toward me, several sections highlighted in neon yellow. According to HOA Guidelines, Section 7, Paragraph 12, there is to be no loitering in common areas, particularly near street corners and intersections. I took the paper from her, careful to maintain my composure. Loitering? We are waiting for the school bus. Ellie is 11 years old. I cannot exactly let her wait alone. Karen's eyes narrowed. The rule exists for safety reasons. Your presence here creates a traffic hazard. You block visibility for drivers making turns. I glanced around at the quiet residential intersection where cars rarely exceeded 15 miles per hour. I stand on the sidewalk, Ms. Whitman, not in the street. Furthermore, she continued as if I had not spoken, your child leaves scuff marks on the curb. The HOA is responsible for maintaining all common areas, and repeated damage requires expensive repairs. I looked down at Ellie's sneakers, then back at Karen, momentarily speechless at the absurdity of her claim. Ellie pressed closer to my side, clearly uncomfortable with the confrontation. Ms. Whitman, I appreciate your concern for the neighborhood, but waiting for a school bus is hardly damaging property. This is a designated bus stop. Her lips pressed into a thin line. The bus stop designation comes from the school district, not the HOA, and the HOA has jurisdiction over all common areas within Oak Ridge Estates. From the corner of my eye, I could see curtains twitching in nearby houses, neighbors watching but not intervening, not unusual in situations like this. People preferred to stay out of conflicts, especially when Karen was involved. I will review these guidelines, I said, folding the paper and slipping it into my pocket. But I cannot leave my child unattended. You can wait in your driveway, she countered. The bus driver can see your child from there. Our driveway is 100 yards away around a bend. The driver would not see her at all. Karen's nostrils flared slightly. Rules are rules, mister. James, I supplied. Michael James. Mr. James, she continued. I suggest you find an alternative arrangement that complies with HOA guidelines. This is your first official warning. Warning? I kept my tone even despite the growing irritation I felt. Years of de-escalating tense situations in my professional life had taught me to stay calm, especially when others were not. Yes, warning. 3 warnings constitute a violation. Violations result in fines. Continued violations can result in more serious consequences. She leaned closer, lowering her voice theatrically. I would not test me on this. I take my responsibilities very seriously. Behind us, I could hear the rumble of the approaching school bus. Ellie tugged at my sleeve, eager to escape the uncomfortable situation. The bus is coming, Dad, she whispered. Karen stepped back, her message delivered. I expect compliance tomorrow morning, Mr. James. Have a nice day. As the bus pulled up to the curb, I knelt down to give Ellie a hug. Do not worry about this, sweetheart. I will handle it. You have a good day at school, okay? She nodded, but her usual cheerful demeanor had dimmed. Is that lady going to be here tomorrow? She asked quietly. Do not worry about her, I assured my daughter. Just focus on having a good day learning about butterfly feet and whatever else comes up. That earned me a small smile before she climbed aboard the bus. I waved as it pulled away, then turned to find Karen still watching me from beside her SUV. Our eyes met briefly before she climbed into her vehicle and drove off. Walking back home, I pulled out the paper she had given me. The highlighted section was vague at best, clearly designed to apply to loitering teenagers or unwanted gatherings, not parents waiting with their children for school transportation. Something about this felt personal, targeted. I made a mental note to look into the actual HOA bylaws rather than whatever edited version Karen had presented to me. If there was going to be an issue, I wanted to know exactly what I was dealing with. Over the next week, what had begun as an annoyance evolved into something much more concerning. Karen's presence became a constant shadow over our morning routine, her tactics growing increasingly aggressive with each passing day. Wednesday morning found her parked in the same spot, but this time with her car window rolled down and her phone clearly visible, pointed directly at Ellie and me. She was recording us. I positioned myself between her camera and my daughter, my back deliberately turned toward Karen's vehicle. "Why is she filming us, Dad?" Ellie whispered, her voice tinged with anxiety. "Some people just have nothing better to do," I replied, trying to keep my tone light despite the anger simmering beneath my calm exterior. "Just ignore her." Thursday brought a new level of absurdity. When Ellie and I arrived at the corner, we found two bright orange traffic cones placed precisely where we usually stood. A handwritten sign attached to one of them read, "No standing zone, HOA regulation." I moved the cones aside without comment and resumed our usual position. From her car, Karen furiously scribbled on her clipboard, her face pinched with indignation. By Friday, Ellie was dragging her feet on our walk to the bus stop. The morning ritual that had once brought us joy had transformed into a source of anxiety. She kept looking over her shoulder, expecting Karen to appear at any moment. "Can we just wait in the driveway?" she asked, her voice small. "I can run to the bus when I see it." I knelt down to her level, meeting her eyes. "No, sweetheart, this is your bus stop. You have every right to wait here safely, and I am going to make sure that happens. Do not let anyone make you feel otherwise." That afternoon, I called the HOA president, leaving a detailed message about the situation and requesting clarification on the supposed regulations Karen kept citing. My call was not returned. I tried again on Saturday. Still nothing. Monday morning brought the most direct confrontation yet. Karen had arrived before us, this time standing outside her vehicle with arms crossed. As we approached, she stepped forward, blocking our path to the usual waiting spot. "This is private property," she announced loudly, though we were clearly on a public sidewalk. "You are trespassing." I maintained a measured distance between us, keeping Ellie slightly behind me. "This is a public right-of-way, Ms. Whitman. It is not private property." "The HOA maintains this area," she insisted, her voice rising. "That gives us jurisdiction over its use." "Maintenance responsibility does not convey ownership rights," I explained patiently, drawing on my knowledge of municipal law. "This sidewalk and street corner are public spaces." Her face flushed with anger. "You are deliberately violating HOA rules after multiple warnings. This will be reported." "To whom?" I asked calmly. "I have tried contacting the HOA president twice with no response." "The board does not respond to troublemakers," she snapped. "Your continued defiance has been noted." Throughout this exchange, Ellie pressed closer against my side, her small hand gripping mine tightly. I could feel her trembling slightly, and that awareness fueled my resolve. This was about more than petty rules now. This was affecting my child's sense of security. "Ms. Whitman," I said, my voice deliberately controlled, "I would appreciate it if you would stop filming my minor child without consent. That crosses several legal boundaries." "I am documenting violations," she retorted. "There is no expectation of privacy in public spaces." I chose not to escalate further at that moment. The bus was approaching, and Ellie's well-being was my priority. But as we watched Karen storm back to her vehicle after Ellie boarded the bus, I knew this situation required more formal intervention. That evening, I began compiling documentation of every interaction. Dates, times, descriptions of Karen's behavior, and the impact it was having on Ellie. I installed a small security camera on our front porch with a clear view of the bus stop. If Karen wanted documentation, I would ensure I had my own. What had begun as a minor neighborhood dispute was evolving into something that required my professional attention. Not as chief of police, not yet, but as someone who understood the line between enforcement and harassment. And Karen Whitman was rapidly approaching that line. Tuesday morning arrived with heavy rain clouds hanging low in the sky. Ellie had forgotten her raincoat, realized halfway to the bus stop, and asked if she could run back to get it. I hesitated, glancing around for signs of Karen's white SUV. The street appeared empty. "Go ahead," I told her. "I will wait right here, be quick." I watched as Ellie sprinted back toward our house, disappearing around the bend in the road. The rain had not yet started, but the air felt thick with moisture. I checked my watch. The bus would arrive in about 5 minutes. Less than a minute after Ellie left, Karen's SUV appeared, pulling to a stop directly in front of the bus stop. She must have been waiting, timing her arrival. I steeled myself for another confrontation, but to my surprise, she remained in her vehicle, watching. Perhaps she was merely documenting my presence again. When Ellie did not immediately return, I glanced back toward our house, wondering if she was having trouble finding her coat. That momentary distraction was all Karen needed. As I turned back, I saw her car door opening. She stepped out and walked briskly toward our house, in the direction Ellie had gone. Alarmed, I started to follow, but at that moment another parent approached, asking about the school's upcoming book fair. By the time I disengaged from the conversation, Karen was nowhere to be seen. A sense of unease washed over me. I hurried toward our house, only to meet Ellie running back toward me, her face streaked with tears, no raincoat in sight. "Ellie, what happened?" I asked, kneeling down to her level. She threw her arms around my neck, sobbing. Through her tears, she managed to explain. Karen had intercepted her near our driveway, blocking her path. She had told Ellie that she was no longer permitted at the bus stop corner, that there had been too many violations, and that if she returned there, someone would come to remove her. My blood ran cold, then hot, then ice cold again, threatening a child, my child. This had gone far beyond HOA regulations and petty power plays. "Did she touch you?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. Ellie shook her head. "No, but she stood really close and pointed her finger at me. She said you were breaking rules and that I was not allowed to wait at the corner anymore." I held her tight, feeling her small body trembling against mine. "Listen to me, Ellie. She has no right to say those things, no right to frighten you. You have done nothing wrong. We have done nothing wrong." The school bus arrived then, its yellow presence a momentary distraction from the situation. I gave Ellie an extra long hug before she boarded, assuring her again that everything would be okay. Once the bus pulled away, I walked directly home and accessed the security camera footage. There it was, Karen intercepting my 11-year-old child, leaning over her with an aggressive posture, finger jabbing the air inches from Ellie's face. The camera was too distant to capture audio, but Ellie's body language told the story. Shoulders hunched, stepping backward, then turning to run toward the safety of home. I saved the footage to multiple devices, ensuring it could not be lost or deleted. Then I walked directly to Karen's house 3 streets over. My knock was perhaps firmer than necessary, but my control was slipping. She answered the door with a smug expression that suggested she had been expecting me. "Ms. Whitman," I began, keeping my voice even through sheer force of will, "I would like to discuss what happened this morning when you approached my daughter alone." "I have no idea what you are talking about," she replied, her face a mask of innocence. "You intercepted my 11-year-old child and threatened her with removal from the bus stop." I stated it as the fact it was. Karen's expression hardened. "Your child is obviously making things up, perhaps seeking attention. I would never threaten a child." "We have it on video," I said simply. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, quickly replaced by defiance. "Your little spy cameras cannot record audio, and I was simply informing her of the consequences of your continued violations. Perhaps if you were a better parent, following the rules we all agree to live by, your child would not be caught in the middle." It took every ounce of professional training not to respond to this provocation. Instead, I nodded slowly. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Whitman. I believe I have everything I need." That evening, I placed a call to my friend Robert, an attorney who specialized in harassment cases. I sent him the security footage and explained the situation in detail. He listened without interruption, then asked one simple question. "Why have you not used your position as chief to end this immediately?" "Because I wanted to handle this as a parent, not as law enforcement," I explained. "But she has crossed the line. Now it is time for a different approach. That night, I began documenting everything, every encounter, every witness who might have seen Karen's behavior, every attempt I had made to resolve the situation through proper channels. This was no longer about waiting at a bus stop. This was about protecting my child and ensuring that Karen Whitman could never threaten another child in our neighborhood again. The next morning, rain fell in steady sheets across Oak Ridge Estates. I drove Ellie to school directly, unwilling to subject her to another potential confrontation at the bus stop. Her normally bubbly demeanor had dimmed, replaced by a quiet wariness that broke my heart. This was the impact of Karen's behavior, a child afraid to stand at her own bus stop. Upon arriving at the station, I found an envelope on my desk marked Urgent Chief James. Inside was a complaint form, filled out in detailed, meticulous handwriting I immediately recognized as Karen's. The complaint alleged that I had been aggressive, threatening, and creating a public disturbance in the neighborhood. It claimed I had intimidated an HOA representative carrying out official duties and demanded an investigation. The irony might have been amusing if it were not so infuriating. Karen had filed a complaint against me with my own department, apparently unaware of my position. I placed the document in a folder alongside my growing collection of evidence against her. By noon, my phone was buzzing with text messages from neighbors. Karen had taken her campaign public, posting in the neighborhood online forum about the dangerous man who was threatening HOA representatives and refusing to follow community standards. She painted herself as a victim standing up for neighborhood safety while casting me as an aggressive troublemaker. What she did not anticipate was the neighborhood response. Several parents whose children also waited at that bus stop came to my defense, nodding they had witnessed Karen's behavior over the past weeks. Others shared their own stories of encounters with her, revealing a pattern of harassment hiding behind HOA authority. Within hours, Karen's post had been removed by the forum moderators for violating community guidelines against personal attacks. But screenshots had already been saved and shared, including Karen's increasingly unhinged responses to those who questioned her version of events. When I returned home that evening, I found a white envelope tucked into my mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just my name written in that same distinctive handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper with block letters, "Move or else." I slipped the note into an evidence bag, careful to touch only the edges. Tampering with mailboxes was a federal offense. Threatening notices elevated the situation to criminal harassment. Karen was spiraling, each action digging her deeper into legal jeopardy. The next morning, I drove Ellie to school again. As we pulled out of our driveway, I noticed Karen's white SUV parked across the street. She was watching our house now, following our movements. The line between HOA enforcement and stalking had not just been crossed, it had been obliterated. Back at the station, I briefed my deputy chief on the situation. Word had already spread through the department about the harassment my family was facing. Several officers volunteered to drive by my house during their patrols. Others offered to speak with the HOA board directly. "Let me handle this," I told them, "but thank you." I spent my lunch break making two important calls. The first was to the HOA president, who finally answered his phone. He sounded nervous, aware of the situation but clearly hoping to distance the association from Karen's actions. "Ms. Whitman has been overzealous in her interpretation of the guidelines," he admitted. "The board has not authorized these actions against your family." The second call was to the district attorney, an old colleague who listened carefully to my account and reviewed the electronic copies of evidence I sent over. "This is textbook harassment," she confirmed. "Add in the threat to a minor, intimidation, and false reporting. I can have papers drawn up by tomorrow morning." That afternoon, as I was leaving the station, I spotted Karen waiting in the parking lot. She approached my vehicle, clipboard in hand, apparently unaware she was walking directly into police headquarters. "Mr. James," she called out, "I have documented over 15 violations now. The board will be moving forward with." She stopped mid-sentence as she noticed the badge on my belt, revealed when I removed my jacket in the warm afternoon sun. Her eyes moved from the badge to my face, then to the building behind me with police department clearly marked above the entrance. "You are the chief of police," she stated flatly, the realization visibly dawning on her face. "Yes, Ms. Whitman, I am." My voice remained professional, devoid of the satisfaction I admittedly felt in that moment. "And we need to discuss the threatening note you left in my mailbox, as well as your harassment of my minor child." The color drained from her face, replaced quickly by righteous indignation. "This is corruption. You are using your position to intimidate me. I was just doing my job." "Threatening 11-year-old children is not a job, Ms. Whitman. Neither is filing false reports or stalking families." I gestured toward the station entrance. "Would you like to discuss this inside, or shall we wait for officers to arrive at your home with a warrant?" For once, Karen Whitman had nothing to say. She turned abruptly and hurried to her car, fumbling with her keys before speeding out of the parking lot. I watched her go, knowing this confrontation was merely the beginning of the end. The wheels of justice were already in motion. The case against Karen Whitman came together with methodical precision. Each piece of evidence, each witness statement, each documented incident formed part of a comprehensive picture of harassment and intimidation. The district attorney, Sarah Mitchell, reviewed everything personally. Her assessment was unequivocal. Multiple counts of harassment, intimidation of a minor, filing false police reports, misuse of the postal system for threats. She ticked off the charges on her fingers. "Add in the documentation from other neighbors who have come forward, and we have a clear pattern of behavior." I had deliberately removed myself from the official investigation, turning everything over to my deputy chief to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest. But I was kept informed of developments as they unfolded. What surprised me most was how quickly the neighborhood united once the truth emerged. People who had remained silent for months suddenly found their voices, sharing stories of Karen's tactics. The HOA board, eager to distance themselves from potential liability, provided written statements confirming that Karen's actions had never been authorized by the association. She took it upon herself to interpret and enforce rules that either did not exist or were being grossly misapplied, the HOA president stated in his formal deposition. The board never approved confrontations with residents, especially not with children. On Thursday morning, exactly 16 days after Karen first approached us at the bus stop, I received the call I had been waiting for. "Warrant approved," Deputy Chief Rodriguez informed me. "We are proceeding this afternoon." I arranged for Ellie to spend the afternoon with her best friend's family. Though I had kept many details from her, she knew that the mean lady from the bus stop was in trouble for scaring her. She also now understood why I had driven her to school every day for the past week. "When can I take the bus again?" she had asked that morning. "Soon," I promised, "very soon." At precisely 3:45 p.m., 3 patrol cars pulled up in front of Karen Whitman's house on Magnolia Lane. I watched from an unmarked vehicle parked at a discreet distance. This was not my operation to lead. I was there merely as an observer, a father seeing justice done for his child. Deputy Chief Rodriguez approached the front door with 2 officers flanking him. The knock was firm, authoritative. Karen answered wearing her HOA jacket, clipboard still in hand as if she had been preparing to make her afternoon rounds of the neighborhood. I could not hear the exchange from my position, but I could see the progression of emotions across her face. Confusion, indignation, disbelief, and finally, as Rodriguez presented the warrant, something resembling fear. When she began shouting, her voice carried clearly across the quiet afternoon. "This is persecution. This is corruption. He put you up to this." An officer took her gently but firmly by the arm. Standard procedure for someone growing increasingly agitated during an arrest. Karen responded by jerking away, her clipboard clattering to the ground, papers scattering across her immaculate front lawn. Ironically, a violation of the very HOA guidelines she had enforced so zealously. "You cannot do this to me. Do you know who I am? I am the compliance officer. I maintain order in this community." As the officers escorted her to the waiting patrol car, neighbors emerged from their homes, not to gawk or celebrate, but to witness the end of a reign of petty tyranny that had affected many of them over the years. One elderly woman approached me as I stood watching from a distance. "Are you the father of the little girl from the bus stop?" she asked quietly. I nodded, surprised she had recognized me. "My grandson waits there too. He saw what she did." She patted my arm gently. "Thank you. Some of us were too afraid to speak up." From the back seat of the patrol car, Karen continued her tirade, visible through the window, gesticulating wildly. "This is all a conspiracy. The chief has corrupted all of you. I was protecting our property values. I was enforcing the rules." As the patrol car pulled away, I felt no triumph, no vindication. Only relief that a source of fear had been removed from my daughter's life. I thanked the officers at the scene and drove home, where I stood for a long moment looking at the corner bus stop from my living room window. Ellie joined me, sliding her small hand into mine. "Is she gone?" she asked. "Yes, sweetheart, she is gone. Forever." "I do not know about forever, but she will not bother you again, that I can promise." Ellie leaned against me, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in weeks. "Good. I miss taking the bus with my friends." The aftermath of Karen's arrest brought unexpected healing to our neighborhood. Like lancing a boil, the removal of her toxic presence allowed wounds to heal that many had not even acknowledged existed. The HOA board called an emergency meeting the following week. The community center was packed. Residents who had never before participated in neighborhood governance suddenly felt empowered to attend, to speak, to reclaim their community. The board president, a nervous man named Howard Jenkins, opened with a formal apology. "The actions taken by Ms. Whitman were never authorized by this board," he stated, hands trembling slightly around his microphone. "We deeply regret the harm caused to families, particularly to children in our community. Effective immediately, we have implemented new oversight procedures for all HOA representatives." When Howard asked if anyone wished to speak, I stood. A hush fell over the room as I walked to the front. Most of my neighbors knew me only as Ellie's dad. Few had connected me with the chief of police until Karen's very public arrest. "My name is Michael James," I began, looking out at the sea of faces. "Some of you know me as Ellie's father. Others now know me as the chief of police. Today, I want to speak to you as both." I paused, gathering my thoughts. What happened in our neighborhood was not just about one person enforcing arbitrary rules. It was about what happens when we stay silent in the face of bullying, when we look away rather than stand up for each other. Nods of recognition rippled through the audience. My daughter was afraid to wait for her school bus, afraid to stand on a public sidewalk. No child should feel that way in their own neighborhood. No family should feel threatened in the place they call home. I looked directly at Howard Jenkins. I do not blame the HOA for the actions of one person, but I do ask that moving forward, this board remembers its true purpose, to maintain our community as a place where people feel safe, respected, and valued. The revised HOA guidelines were distributed that evening. Gone were the vague, easily misinterpreted rules that Karen had wielded like weapons. In their place were clear, specific policies with appropriate enforcement procedures that required board approval for any action. As the meeting concluded, neighbors approached me, some to apologize for their silence, others to share their own experiences with Karen, still others simply to introduce themselves properly for the first time. Community was being rebuilt, connection by connection. Karen Whitman herself remained in custody pending trial. Her attorney had attempted to paint her as a dedicated community servant overzealous in her duties, but the mountain of evidence and witness testimonies told a different story. She would eventually accept a plea deal that included probation, mandatory counseling, and a restraining order preventing her from contacting my family or returning to Oak Ridge Estates. The following Monday morning dawned clear and bright. Ellie and I stood at the kitchen counter, packing her lunch together. "Can we walk to the bus stop today?" she asked, hope evident in her voice. Of course we can, I replied. Our walk felt like a victory lap. Neighbors waved from their driveways. A couple of other parents stood chatting at the corner, their children playing a quick game of rock, paper, scissors while waiting for the bus. Hey, Ellie, called out her friend Zach. We saved your spot. She ran ahead to join the small group, her backpack bouncing, laughter floating back to me on the morning breeze. I stood a few paces behind, watching, allowing her this reclaimed independence. One of the mothers approached me. We heard what happened. Thank you for standing up, not just as the chief, but as a parent. We all have to look out for each other, I said simply. The yellow school bus rounded the corner, its familiar rumble a comforting sound once again. Ellie turned to wave at me, her smile bright and untroubled. I waved back, watching as she climbed aboard with her friends, took her seat by the window, and gave me one final thumbs up before the bus pulled away. Standing alone at the corner, I took a moment to appreciate the ordinary miracle of this morning. No confrontations, no threats, no fear. Just a father watching his daughter head off to school, safe in the knowledge that she would return to a community that had remembered how to protect its own. Some battles we fight as professionals, some we fight as parents, and some we fight simply because we must. But the sweetest victory is not the defeat of an enemy, it is the restoration of peace. The return to normal, the simple joy of a child waiting for a school bus without fear.